is Gabby and welcome back to my channel, or if you're new here then welcome to my channel, and today's video is going to be my October 2024 reading wrap-up. We have 2 books, 2 audiobooks, 2 graphic novels, 6 manga volumes, and then the usual manga chapters to talk about today. I will have the content warnings I can find linked down below in the description along with links to some resources, and let's go ahead and get into it. And we are going to start with an audiobook, which is The Empress of Salt and Fortune by Nghi. And The Empress of Salt and Fortune follows a young royal from the far north who is sent south for a political marriage with her carefully chosen allies. A handmaiden named Rabbit befriends the emperor's lonely new wife and gets much more than she expected. This was a very quick audiobook, and I really liked the way and the format that the story was told in. I also thought that the characters were interesting, but I do wish that this was longer, and I feel like I struggled to get into it. Like, there were things and parts of the story that I did really like and that do stick out in my mind, but I also feel very neutral about a lot of this and very detached from it at the same time. And I did put this on with the goal to have it distract me from a long task that I was doing for work, and it didn't fully accomplish that, but it also did do enough that it did make me want to listen to the rest of the series and just kind of see what other characters and other stories that this author has in store for me. And I ended up giving The Empress of Salt and Fortune 3.5 out of 5 stars. Next up, we have Look Back by Tatsuki Fujumoto, and Look Back follows our main character who draws a manga strip for her school newspaper, which makes her the star of her 4th grade class. That is until another student begins drawing manga for the school newspaper, and she begins to compare her work to this student's. So last month I read Goodbye Erin from Tatsuki Fujumoto, and I thought that it was really well done, but I didn't love the ending, and I didn't feel as emotionally attached to it as I really needed to, just to get like the full impact of it, but I like this so much more than Goodbye Arai. And as usual, the art and the composition of the panels were amazing. I also really enjoyed the slice of life elements and the commentary on art and manga. Everything just felt really solid, and I cannot wait to eventually watch the movie that they made out of this, because I can easily see this being a really good movie, and I've heard that it is. And it was those slice of life moments that I do think were probably my favorite aspect of this story, so much so that I actually do think that I wanted more of them, or just go a little bit more in depth into them, just to further develop the main relationship and the characters, because I did feel attached to that relationship and to the characters this time. And that also just made me want more, and I'm also not really sure how I feel about the ending either, but I'm definitely glad that I read this, and I ended up giving Look Back 4.5 out of 5 stars. Next up, we have The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sangu Mandanna, and this follows our main character who, as one of the few witches in Britain, has had to keep her magic a secret. But she does post videos to the internet of her pretending to be a witch, thinking that no one would take it seriously until somebody does, and she gets invited to the Nowhere House to teach magic to 3 young witches. As she gets more comfortable with the house and with its inhabitants, she feels like she finally has somewhere that she belongs, but when things get dangerous, she's going to have to decide if she's willing to risk everything for her newfound family. I went into this book expecting a cozy book with witches and found family, and that's exactly what this is. And it was cozy, almost to the point of sleepy, which I actually did really like in this case, especially combined with the characters and the found family and all of the magic going on. But what I loved most about this book were all of the conversations surrounding loneliness and self-worth and trusting others. Like, there were quite a few lines and quotes and just dialogue in here that could have easily have been taken out straight from my brain, and I felt really connected to this book and to our main character specifically because of that, and I did just really love all of the personal journeys that our characters went on in here. But it does have a darker side as well, and like a dark comedy to it, and I think they balance that with like the cozy adorableness in a really interesting way, and in a way that I feel like really worked for it, even though it was kind of like a surprising and drastic tone shift. But yeah, this gave me exactly what I wanted from it and a little bit more. It's one of my favorites that I've read so far this year for sure, and definitely one of my favorite romances, and I ended up giving The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches 5 out of 5 stars. Next up is Volume 10 of Skip and Loafer by Misaki Takamatsu. And Skip and Loafer follows our main character who comes from a small country town but is chasing her dreams in a large Tokyo high school, where she finds out that the social norms of city high schoolers are much more out of her element than she originally thought. I mean, every month is automatically a good reading month when Skip and Loafer is here, and this volume was very adorable and had some really incredible moments, and it was of course lovely to just like be back with the characters and to see these relationships again. But this one did feel a little bit like a volume that is going to be eventually in between 2 more important volumes in in terms of storyline, and I'm really curious to see how they handle some of the things that they set up moving forward. Next up is Volume 2 of Witch Hat Atelier by Kamome Shirahama, and Witch Hat Atelier is set in a world where everyone takes magic for granted, and our main character Coco really wants to be a witch. It's her dream, but she just wasn't born with the gift for magic, and she's about to give up, but that all changes when she meets a traveling magician who is performing magic in a way that she's never seen before. As she quickly learns that what everybody else knows about magic might not be the entire truth, and that her dream might not be as far away from her as she originally thought. I basically just want to like copy and paste what I said about volume 1 of this manga and put it here, because my feelings are very similar. The art style is one of my favorite things in this world. It is incredibly gorgeous. I also really love all of the fantasy. It feels perfect for the fall, and also just kind of perfect when I think about my own personal preference when it comes to fantasy aesthetics. I've also been really loving all of the characters and all of their interactions as well, and this volume very much did confirm all of that for me. And it showed off some really sweet and in some cases complex and interesting relationships, and I really liked all of the storylines as well. And I do feel like that they balance that like cute slice of life with the more action fantasy really well, and I feel like they're going to start to balance it with some more dark fantasy soon, which should be really interesting, and I just feel like they're succeeding in all ways here for me, and I am just so excited to read more. Next up is volume 1 of The Guy She Was Interested In Wasn't a Guy at All by Sumiko Arai, and this follows our main character who is a fashionable and upbeat high schooler after she falls hard for the employee at her local CD shop who has the same taste in music as her. However, that mysterious, well-dressed, and male employee is actually her very reserved female classmate who sits right next to her and is very aware of her crush. So fun fact, I actually got introduced to the series scrolling through Instagram, and I clicked a piece of fan art that I thought was Obamitsu fan art from Demon Slayer, but it was actually these two. And now we're here, and I really enjoyed this volume. It had a lot of fun moments. I really like the characters, and I really like the way that the story and their relationship revolves around music. I really feel like the series has a nice aesthetic when it comes to that, and I'm really interested to see how this relationship is going to evolve and develop in future volumes, but this was a really strong start for sure. Next up is Avatar: The Last Airbender, Katara and the Pirate Silver by Faith Erin Hicks with Adele Matera, Peter Wartman, Richard Starkings, and Jimmy Betancourt. And this is a standalone graphic novel that follows Katara after she has been separated from the rest of Team Avatar during a sudden ambush from the Fire Nation. And in order to reunite with them, she is going to have to team up with some unlikely allies and explore her tougher side. I think I underestimated this going into it, and I do think that is because the Lost Adventures and Team Avatar tales were these kind of just like very simple and silly and very short stories that were mostly fun but not much else, and Katara and the Pirate Silver feels like it could have easily have come straight from the show. Like this could have easily have been not only an episode but a really good episode. And I love getting to see Katara show off her skills, and I also really enjoyed all of the new characters. They were interesting and also more on the morally gray side, so it was interesting to see Katara team up with them. And from an Aang, Toph, and Sokka standpoint, their conversation and just interaction that they had with the Fire Nation soldier in here felt very current. So yeah, this one did kind of end up surprising me, and from what I've heard about the other graphic novels that I still have to read, of which there are many, there are more really good graphic novels ahead of this one, but for now, I ended up giving Katara and the Pirate Silver 5 out of 5 stars. Next up is Uzumaki by Junji Ito, and this takes place in a small town and follows our main character Kirie and her boyfriend Shuichi, who believes that the town has been cursed by a hypnotic spiral pattern. I did not watch the anime that they recently made of this, which I was never going to watch it before reading the original anyway, whether it turned out good or not, and the answer to that sounds like it is unfortunately not, which is disappointing, and there seems to be a really disappointing situation surrounding that anime and its production. But today is for the manga, and this is by far my favorite Junji Ito manga out of the ones that I've read so far. The art was, again, as usual for this author, incredible, and I thought that it really landed all the creepy and at times disgusting horror, and I really liked how it worked for the setting as a whole. It's a story that I feel like if not handled carefully can easily turn from horror to silly, and the manga didn't turn silly, thankfully, and I felt like whatever storyline that this wanted to pursue, it succeeded at, and I was just along for the ride for the entire thing. And there are just so many storylines and a lot of different elements in here that really do matter. There's some foreshadowing foreshadowing as well, and I really love the way that it all came together and the pacing of just like seeing everything slowly get revealed and developed in here. And I also do think that this is the first time that I felt really attached to our two main characters and their relationship in a Junji Ito story. And my only complaint is that because I did feel attached to them and I did really like them, I would have loved to have gotten to know them better. Which isn't necessarily the point of this story. Like, I see why that didn't happen because this has much more important things going on. I don't fully feel like that is necessary to dive deeper into them, but it is something that I still wanted. And I also do think that I would have liked to have gone a little bit more in depth about like the cosmic horror of it all. So I ended up giving Uzumaki 4.75 out of 5 stars, but you know, if I change that to a 5-star one day, don't be surprised because it's not unlikely. Next up is Never Whistle at Night, an Indigenous dark fiction anthology. Yeah, this is basically just what the title says it is. It's a dark fiction anthology written by Indigenous authors. And it is probably one of the darkest, most horrific things that I've ever read, and also probably one of the best audiobooks that I've listened to. There were stories in here that made me feel physically nauseous, and it felt like this found a lot of new, a lot of creative, a lot of different ways to make me feel that way throughout this collection. There are some insanely disturbing things in here, so again, content warnings will be linked down below in the description, and you know, that's what I signed up for. I mean all of what I just said as a huge compliment. And there are really incredible authors featured in here, some that I was familiar with prior to reading this and was super excited to see, and also a good amount of authors that I was introduced to through this collection because it has a lot of stories, so there are a lot of authors. And I don't think that there was a poorly written or poorly executed story in here. Like, the quality was extremely high. And there were so many interesting ideas and concepts. Some stories definitely did stand out more than others, but it felt like each story had something about it that made it stand out and that hooked me into it, even if it was just from like the shock of something that happened in terms of horror. And there was a lot of that, but there were only really a few stories in here that I didn't prefer in terms of storyline. But I am really glad that I listened to this throughout October and especially on Halloween, and I ended up giving Never Whistle at Night 4.75 out of 5 stars. As for my other Halloween read, we have Sleep Like Death by Kalynn Bayron. And this is a fairy tale retelling of Snow White, and it follows Princess Eve, who is raised to defeat the evil sorcerer called the Nghi, who has been devastating the queendom with his evil magic, and with her own magic, Eve is more than ready to fight as her 17th birthday approaches. But with her mother talking to a strange mirror every night, and with the Knight's messenger revealing an unexpected truth about her past, Eve finds herself unsure of who to trust or what to do next. I basically read all of this minus like 50 to 60 pages in one day, and again, that day was Halloween. And I was fully invested in this and immersed in it the entire way through, which rarely happens when I read that many pages in one day. And I feel like that is because it did have a really nice, dark, spooky, I would say even gothic fairy tale vibe. That being said, I do feel like my brain had to do like a little bit extra work with this one to really create that vibe. And I will also link the music that I listened to while reading this in the description because I also feel like that really helped. And I don't know, I do have some conflicting feelings about this book because I'm not really fully sure what was my brain and what was the book in terms of atmosphere creation, and it does matter because I have read so many reviews of this book that say that they cannot stand the main character, and I can easily see how you can get there, but because my brain took her into like a more gothic princess with some arrogance instead of arrogant princess, I feel like I liked her a lot more than other people did, and I feel like I was able to have more fun with the content of the story as well. Like, it felt dark gothic fairy tale, but it also felt kind of silly and kind of campy, and I don't know if that was just my brain or if that is just the books, because I fully believe that Kalynn Bayron has once again constructed an incredibly interesting dark fairy tale world and story, with just so much lore and so much mystery, and I loved it so much, which I wasn't surprised about at all because I felt the exact same way about Cinderella is Dead by this author, and I also feel like this was the closest to this Poison Heart that I've gotten with this author since finishing and loving that book. But I also didn't really love the romance, and some of the lore teasing did feel like it was a little bit much throughout the book to the point where it did start to feel annoying, even though I would love to see the author expand more on this world and just see more fairy tale retellings from this author in general. And I decided to base my rating of this book off of what I gave to Cinderella is Dead, which was a 3.75, and I do really feel like I like this book more overall, so I ended up giving Sleep Like Death 4 out of 5 stars. Next up is A Game for Swallows, To Die, To Leave, To Return by Zaina Abirished, and A Game for Swallows takes place during the Civil War in Lebanon, and that is just part of normal life for our main character character who was born after it had already begun. The city of Beirut has been cut in two, and our main character's parents are visiting the other side of the city. But as a bombing grows closer and her parents still haven't returned, her neighbors create a world indoors for her and her brother that feels comfy and safe, as they wait for them to return home and just hope and try to get everybody through the day safe. And yeah, this is a graphic novel that definitely gives you a peek into what it's like to live under these kinds of bombings and how normal it can become, even when it's not something that should be normal. Because this was very slice of life, and you get to see like a lot of cute little interactions between the characters, and also like a lot of really mundane ones as well while everything is going on. And I thought this graphic novel did a really good job at portraying that kind of atmosphere and just like establishing the characters and the relationships. You get to know them and you can really feel how much that they care for one another. And it did feel a little bit info dumpy at times when they started to introduce each character and their story. I also had like a little bit of conflicting feelings about the art style, because while I really liked it for a majority of this, it did just feel a little bit confusing at times when it comes to the composition, but it didn't end up impacting my reading experience that much. And I ended up giving A Game for Swallows, To Die, To Leave, To Return 4.5 out of 5 stars. And next up, we have Volume 1 of Welcome to Demon School Iruma-kun by Osamu Nishi. And this follows our main character whose parents have sold his soul, and he now has to attend school in the Netherworld, where he will have to keep his identity of being a human a secret. It's been a couple of years now since I've watched season 1 of the anime, so this was a very nice return. And now I get to control the pacing of how long that we stay in some of like those more basic shonen situations that the series finds itself in. So that's been fun, and I get to do it with all of like the adorable and wholesome and fun characters. And it was so great to see them all again, and this volume had so many adorable, wholesome, and fun moments. This series just has so much heart, and I do wish that I had more time than I did to read more of this series on Halloween, but I'll probably keep going soon anyway. And finally, we have the manga chapters that I read from series that I am currently caught up to over on the Shonen Jump and Manga Plus apps, including chapter 116 of Kaiju number 8, chapters 22 and 23 of Ruri Dragon, chapter 63 of You and I Are Polar Opposites, chapters 166 to 170 of Blue Box, chapters 129 to 132 of Akane Banashi, and chapters 52 through 55 of Kagurabachi. And as always, all of these were really good, but my favorites this month were Akane Banashi, because I feel like they're starting to really dive into things and just kind of starting to reveal things to us, and I feel like they're doing it in a really good way, just all around. I also really love Kaiju number 8 this month, who had a very Hoshina and Narumi focused chapter, but my top favorite this month definitely has to be Blue Box, whose anime I have been really loving this season, by the way. And I do think that some of that love that I have for the anime has transferred over to the manga and just like piled on top of the love that I already had for it. And these chapters were so adorable in so many ways, and also heartbreaking in a couple of different ways as well. And I do personally need that angst to be resolved immediately, so hopefully that happens. Okay, so that is all that I have for today's video. Thank you all so much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell, and answer the question that'll be around here if you want to do that. And hopefully I will see you here next time. Bye.